Yes, social media is still adapting. What is its future and what does it mean for your life at work and home? We'll talk about that today on Culture Builder Live. Hey, I'm Chris Wink. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Technically, a news organization that serves a community of technologists and entrepreneurs. Social media may sound old. It's not. It continues to evolve and shape much of our lives. We're going to talk about that today and its implications for work and home with two friends of the show. We have Christopher Golzinski. He's the co-founder, he's the co-founder of Niche, new company we'll be talking about, past co-founder of Tinder and a co-creator of Bumble. Also be joined by his co-founder, Zavan Nahapetyan, who's a past engineering manager at Facebook, but is his co-founder on Niche. Christopher and Zavan, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Appreciate it. So let's start with our current moment of terror. It is quite common to talk about AI-powered social media algorithms are tearing about society. I will note that historians will talk often about. We've had other periods where technology was a terrible threat and we just adapted. You guys are launching a company that is doing things differently. So I want to talk a little bit about why you're doing what you're doing. Tell us a little bit about Niche, but also, is it all that dangerous? Are we overhyping the threat that social is? So what are you guys working on and why does it matter now?
Yeah. So we're building Niche. It's an ecosystem for decentralized interest-based networks. So
a lot of words, Christopher. You're gonna have to help me break that down.
We're gonna break it down. So social-based, interest-based social networks, right? So right now we're all connected, giant platforms, big Facebook, big Twitter, TikTok. And all of that content is being used to get your eyeballs on the screen as long as possible so those companies can sell you ads. So you're being productized whether you like it or not, and we're all being connected on these giant ad platforms. So we're getting smaller. There's a movement in social to get smaller around shared interests, shared backgrounds. So that's how we're organizing. And then the decentralized part of it is that's like the Web3, the boogaboo language of giving ownership, right? It's a means of giving ownership of the content and what happens in those networks to the people that are in those networks, rather than being owned by Facebook or by TikTok or whoever. So the people that are producing the content own the content and have agency over what happens in those networks. So as to why now, I think Zavan can add a little more in this too, because he's got so much experience with Facebook. But I feel like we're being productized. We're being used to drive ad dollars, and that's a misuse, I think, of the connection, the worldwide connection that we're seeing. The promises of the Web 2.0, we're going to connect the world, all boiled down to now we're going to sell you ads, and that's, I think, not fair.
The one pushback, let me set you up. One pushback would be, look, in 1982, you're not telling me that newspapers were doing anything differently than having a set of consumers who are an advertising product, right? Like, maybe let me push you a bit more. Is this moment so much scarier?
Yeah, and that's where the AI-powered ranking comes in, because the algorithms are optimized to get you to spend as much time as they can on your phone so that they could show you more ads. And they're also optimized to collect as much information as they can about you to make those more targeted. Newspapers didn't have that capability, right? It was just everyone got the same newspaper. But now it's collecting all this information about people that is creating this really toxic environment where you have people that are seeing more divisive content than ever. You have people that are essentially getting addicted to their phones. And that's all of these things are happening automatically, through these algorithms.
This is the joke. I think it's the Tristan Harris line that every time you open a social app, it's you against 1,000 of the smartest engineers in the world. And that's something that you guys
many thousands for sure.
Right. So dig in a bit more, like, Christopher, you touched on this, which I think is right. We are watching a lot of changes happening. We've seen, from a decade ago, everyone has to have a personal brand online. There's a real cultural pushback of people who are actively and intentionally creating anonymity online. It was once teased, and now I think there's a return to that. People are fighting back in different ways, and maybe it's just natural, right? Like, we built the biggest systems in the history of humanity, and so naturally we're seeing folks go smaller. That's the bet you guys are betting on.
Yeah, current social media, out of the daily active users, about 1% of those people actually create any of the content that you're actually looking at. So 99% of the people that log in on a daily basis are just consuming passively, very passively, right? And that's being co-opted for targeted ad views. We keep saying, being able to own your content, and then being able to post it to a group that shares similar interests. I feel like once you start working for yourselves rather than working for the big companies to drive their ad dollars, then you can start building community and start building value for yourselves rather than building value for these huge companies.
Can you guys give me a bit on why community has become so in vogue? I run a community news organization. We're 15 years old. I quite remember when every time we talked about that we were a community news site, it sounded like we were running a soup kitchen. It was seen as there's no way that there's any real viable work to be done. And we've watched the rise of community-focused VC funds in the last few years. This has gone a very different route in which community is seen as quite powerful. So maybe tell me a little bit about why community is a watchword for the work you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's part of that trend that I was talking about getting smaller. The interconnectedness was so big that we needed to kind of go back into these like smaller niches. Sorry for the word, but that's just the way we describe it, right? Because we're trying to find more connection, more valuable relational status among the people in there, because that provides identity. And once you can show your identity online and who you are, the types of different social circles that you're in, that makes a beautiful, very unique Venn diagram of who you are as a person, right? And then we can show you against all other people and where those circles overlap. And that's fodder for really rich communication, relationships, like all the cool things I think that were promised before, but we can do it now, and I think in a really authentic way.
Zama, maybe for you, maybe this is just a consequence of how the internet works, that all new technologies now go through this boom and bust cycle. This was obviously a repeated crypto story, but it seems like every advanced technology that it is said this will change the world, and everyone gets excited, and it can never deliver on that promise as fast as it said. There's a pullback, but then folks then say, like, but then the real work happens. And Web3 might be having a version of that. It became, my dad knows what Web3 means now. That has happened really quickly. So let me push on you guys. I remember 8 years ago, the joke of every VC-backed company suddenly added blockchain to their pitch deck. Is Web3 just that? Like, you just toss in Web3 onto every other pitch? Or is there something distinctive? And tell me a little bit about why that is.
Yeah, people were definitely doing that. Like, people are for sure just adding Web3 to their pitch deck, either Web3 or metaverse for things that often really had nothing to do with either, so that they could raise more money. And we're seeing actually the pushback, and I think it's really healthy, because I think then the word isn't as overused and diluted, and people can instead focus on the real technology, what problems it can solve, and what we can achieve with it. What Web3 is essentially decentralizing things. So instead of having, say, a big company like Facebook or Google store all of the users' data, have all of the control over who can do what, take that power away from them and give it to the people, make it more democratic. And Web3 is a technology that enables us to do this. And a lot of what is making these things feasible really only started happening the last couple of years, like maybe 2-3 years maximum. And so it's going to be a while before that could actually see the real use cases that we're looking for. Like, to really have like killer Web3 products that do something meaningful, I think will take several more years, just because the tech is so new and all this stuff is so unprecedented.
The portability of email is still so remarkable to me that I've like gotten myself in more than one squabble with other publishers and others of like, do not disparage the almighty electronic mail.
Sure.
Because like, it is one thing that is quite, for me, cool, that you can have a direct relationship with a community of people, and the enduring power of email for me is somewhat tied to that.
Yeah.
Do you think we can reach somewhere like that with the Web3 technologies that we're so often talking about?
I think so. But it'll take a little bit. Like the internet was very decentralized at first, but you didn't know anything going on. You kind of had to, go to these like big portals to find what other websites there were, or some aggregators. And Web 2 was all about consolidating that. So now you have your Facebooks of the world, your YouTubes, and you can find all the content in one place. But in consolidating it, we made the user interfaces better. We made it easier to find things, but we took power away from people. And Web3 is about finding the best of both worlds. It's about giving that power back, but still having robust UIs and useful products, and kind of taking everything we learned from Web 2, sort of the lessons about how to build good products and the mistakes of what is problematic to do, and kind of applying that in a new way.
Let me, maybe Christopher, this might make sense for you. I lose you guys in a few minutes. Let's turn to what this means for us as users. Someone who's perhaps joins niche, or however you feel the web can play out. I'm really interested in that 10 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago, we all had to have a personal brand. I remember being that kid being told, like, you got to have everything synced. Your personal, your professional, have the website with your name and Twitter handles and all that. It's like, you got to be all the way there all the time, all you. And then as we watch things flatten, you could have no nuance. Feels like in TikTok, you can only talk about one thing if you want to really command it. So you have to narrow you can only like one thing and get into that vortex if you want to be a real creator as opposed to a publisher. Do social media norms, it feels like Web3 and an advancement in social is going to change again our relationship with who we are as people online, what our relationship is to work. Can I say things? Just tell me a little bit, guide me about how you think this plays out for balancing work life, in our internet lives.
The existing way, the old way was all about the incentive structure, right? Like, you had to create this content, you had to have that huge link tree of all these different services, and be producing reels and be producing all this stuff for what end? To participate in the ad revenue dollars, right? Like, you get a little share of the creators fund. They would give you a little sprinkle of it, and just to a few certain people that they would deem worthy to have that kind of like following, and then everyone would be chasing that top of the pyramid. And the only people that really benefits is the large companies and the advertisers, right? Because they're just driving more money into themselves, and that doesn't benefit the average person who spends all day doing this kind of stuff. It doesn't set up a good model for aspiring content creators who want to do the same thing, because they probably won't be able to reach that level of whatever success that they're looking at. So like Zavin was saying, it's a democratization of access and a democratization of ownership. And I think that's a real change in the incentive structure. When you stop working for those other guys and hoping to just get a few sprinkles from their ad dollars, you can start like generating real value for a community that you own. So you get all the benefit, and it's all shared among us. And I think that's like a real kind of like utopian vision for how it was supposed to be, and maybe how it, like, now the technology exists at this specific moment in time because of Web3, that we can like fulfill those promises and like really give that model of ownership and content production like back to everyone in a very like mutually beneficial way.
The joke being, we used to see the internet as an escape from reality, and now real life as an escape from the internet feels like the trend that it's gone. Maybe send me out with a bit softer note. I'd be curious, each of you, like, what do you want out of the future of social? What does an online community mean to you in your own future?
It shouldn't be a real life and a digital life. Like you said, like those lines are disappearing and maybe like merging a little bit too. And I think that's a good thing, because what you have in your hand on your phone is basically the accumulated knowledge of all humankind, which is like the most powerful tool that anyone has ever invented. But we also have these like rich interactions in real life with groups of people around experiences and backgrounds that we all share that give us like wonderful identity. But when that thing in your hand can like make that real life thing even better and add to that experience, like, now we're cooking, man. Like, now we're doing all the stuff that like we wanted to in the first place, and we can get rid of all the like crazy, like, making Facebook rich and making all this other stuff. Like, we can start working for ourselves again.
Yeah, I think the dream is you pull out your phone, you find people that you have something in common with, you learn something, you have genuine connections, You find out about cool events happening, and you go and you experience those connections in person as well. And all of it sort of enriches your life. It enriches your professional life, your social life. It brings on new hobbies, and it all feels very genuine. It just makes things better, rather than you find yourself doom scrolling for 3 hours and you're like, I got literally nothing out of this.
As a frequent doom scroller, I know what you mean. I regret that we're at our time. Zavin and Christopher, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be sure to check in with the progress of Niche. Good luck with it. And thanks so much for the work. That was this week's Culture Builder Live, conversations on building better companies and how the internet plays a role in that. We'll see you next week. As always, we'll drop links below the video and a full recap on Technically with all the details to see what Zavin and Christopher are working on. See you next week, everyone. Bye.